Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, a reminder of our top stories. At least 4 people have been killed and dozens injured following the biggest attack of the war so far on the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv. The NHS is set to receive a £30 billion boost in Wednesday's spending review, but there were protests in London over fears of cuts to other government departments. And new figures have revealed £2.2 billion from the foreign aid budget will be used to house asylum seekers this year. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with PR consultant Kevin McKeever. First, let's take a look at what is on some of the front pages. We're starting with the Sunday Telegraph, which says Tory leader Kemi Badenoch wants bosses to have the right to ban burqas and other face coverings in offices because they are a barrier to integration. The growing security threat from Russia and China sparks a warning from former Chancellor Jeremy Hunt in the Express that the UK needs a bigger army to counter the danger. A warning, too, in The Times, this time from Washington to Downing Street, about allowing China to build an embassy close to sensitive financial sites in London. The Mail on Sunday leads with what it calls a class war sparked by Labour's imposition of VAT on school fees, highlighting the case of a mother who says her son was refused vital NHS treatment because he went to a private school. The Observer focuses on the state of the world's oceans, citing 300 sea life species under threat and China dumping more fish than the UK actually eats, and concludes we're in deep trouble. The Mirror speaks to the mum of a teenager who went missing for 6 weeks but was found after the paper ran a story about him. She's calling for better liaison between the authorities after several opportunities to find him were actually missed. Meanwhile, their sister paper, The People, leads with new moves to protect young people by capping the amount of time they spend on social media. The Sun reports that EastEnders actor Jamie Borthwick has been suspended by the BBC after allegedly using a slur against disabled people on the set of Strictly Come Dancing in Blackpool. And finally, The Star tells us that a huge panther-like creature has been spotted near the country home of singer Ed Sheeran. Love that picture as well. Those are the front pages, and welcome to Kevin McKeever. Now, it's just you, but hopefully not for long. There will be a solo sale for the whole evening. But for now, it's just you. Thank you so much for being with us. Let's start with the Sunday Express and one of the stories that we mentioned there in the headlines. British Army too small in a dangerous world. Now, these are the words of Jeremy Hunt, former Foreign Secretary, of course, coming a few days, or just a week after the Defence Review.
Yeah, I'm going to start. It's remarkable to hear Jeremy Hunt talk about the army being too small. This time 12 months ago, he was sat in the Treasury. But that's a surprise in of itself. But, of course, all week we've been talking about the Strategic Defence Review, the government clearly placing a lot on investment in defence. But, of course, the wider question is, are we fit for purpose in this world of Russia and China, as Jeremy Hunt points out? And will we have the armed forces that are fit to meet the challenge? And actually, is the issue around the number of troops in the army, or is that actually a kind of historic issue? We see the pictures, what's happening in Ukraine, where the battlefield tech is evolving on a weekly basis. And actually, as the SDR said itself, do we have the capability in things like drones, AI, autonomous warfare in order to be able to fight back? So I think it's clearly when the SDR data, following the SDR this week, when the pounds, shillings and pence are put on what's going into defence, it's clearly a big winner. I think we're going to be going from 2.5% to 2.5% of GDP spending in this Parliament, potentially 3% in the next. Getting towards our NATO targets and then where the Americans want to be. But fundamentally, is that going to be enough to meet the threats our country faces? In those huge sums of money, billions of pounds, we're talking about 12 new nuclear submarines. That's a huge investment in the UK's industrial base, but it takes a long time for that to feed through into the system. So I'm sure we'll see more stories next week. Is it enough troops? We'll have that from the army. Are we going to have enough planes from the RAF? Are there going to be enough ships from the Royal Navy? Some of this we've seen before, but fundamentally the real issue about actually what is the future threat we're going to face and where do we put all this investment?
And of course, I mean, we've been talking about it for weeks, about how the army in many ways has been underfunded for many, many years. But it's interesting, even from when Jeremy Hunt was in power and they were in government, I mean, there have been huge changes even since then, Donald Trump to name one.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, we've gone back even 10 years. Nobody thought the major threat would be with land forces. The army was almost kind of seen as obsolete 15 years ago. That's why we invested in the two aircraft carriers, which now themselves seem, like it's huge, huge flagships. But are they going to do much against an attack from Russia? So yeah, the army's role, they are literally back in the front line, not just the troops, of course. What we've seen, particularly with Ukraine, is our ability to backfill when it comes to conflict or how quickly we get through things like ammunition. It's so rapid. We're struggling to backfill the reserves we've given to Ukraine. So all of this is part of the back to basics on the Strategic Defence Review. Now, clearly, as I say, the MOD is a big winner. But actually having to reindustrialise to, I think, be on a pre-war footing, it's pretty serious stuff, this country.
And you mentioned technology. I mean, even the latest fights between Russia and Ukraine show the importance of drones. And so, the huge changes there. I'm sure we'll be discussing that again. Let's go now to the Sunday Times, the front page there. Reform chairman's return after 48 hours. This is a story of Azia Youssef, who resigned on Thursday, or stood down from his role as chairman of the party, and then had a change of heart, a U-turn, you could call it, after just 2 days.
Well, they do say in Westminster, if you're going to U-turn, you better do it quickly.
Well,
so at least he's showing he's a seasoned politician in that regard. I mean, it's quite an interesting story, and one of those ones where we probably really won't know the detail for a few years until someone writes a retrospective biography of the surge of reform. But I think it shows a few things. The first is, this is a very talented man, regardless of your politics, but clearly under a lot of stress. I mean, he said in his...
Well, exactly. Let's just read what he says. In his tweet, he says, my tweet, is in the one where he stood down, was a decision born of exhaustion. That's what he says.
Absolutely. I can totally understand it. I think he was doing 4 or 5 jobs. This is a party that's surging in the polls, just taking control of, double-digit local authorities. Didn't win the by-election in Scotland the week just gone, but, did very, very well. But is doing so with the infrastructure of a start-up party. Political parties, these infrastructures develop over decades, so I can understand that it must be pretty chaotic, actually, at Reform HQ with the staff they've got, no disrespect to them. And clearly, actually, there's a big capacity issue and job to do if Reform's going to survive until the next election. Everyone says around Westminster, when's Reform going to implode? Is it going to happen? We thought maybe that was happening 48 hours ago. Whoever, Nigel Farage maybe, or others, persuaded Azia Youssef to come back to the cause, have a break, do fewer jobs. He's not going to be chairman.
That's interesting. Exactly. He's going to be head of Doge, basically running the UK Doge team.
As a former Goldman Sachs banker, that's probably more in his wheelhouse than maybe running a bunch of political staffers, which I can tell you is no easy feat.
Let's just bring up the front page of the Sunday Telegraph. They're running with the same story, similar headline. Youssef returns to Reform 2 days after exit. Look, I'm sure he was exhausted, but there was the whole issue around the question in Parliament asked by their newest MP about a possible ban of the burqa, and it emerged as well that he does receive a huge amount of racist abuse. Yeah,
I mean, it's just a truism. Politicians of all parties receive a pretty horrible amount of online abuse, but those from ethnic minority backgrounds clearly get significantly more. Azia Youssef, you look at Diane Abbott, it's hideous. And actually, he's not a politician, right? He's a senior figure in politics, helping to run a political party. But in terms of coming through, the grassroots of politics, and perhaps, sadly, maybe getting used to some of that pressure, he's quite rightly felt it, and his family have felt it too. So it can't be easy, but it is remarkable. 48 hours, he's back.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes. And, it's easy to say don't look at the tweets, but it's hard not to. Again, Sunday Telegraph, other front page there. Yep. Kemi Badenoch, so still the burqa theme, in a way. Let bosses ban burqas in offices. What is she talking about in this article, in this interview? I mean,
it's done an interview in the Sunday Telegraph, which we'll have to open the magazine tomorrow to read in full, but we get a trail here on the front page that Badenoch said that actually, workplaces should be allowed to ban to ban burqas. She says herself she doesn't allow people to wear face coverings when it comes to her surgery, and does hint at, potentially what the future could look like for future Conservative candidates in terms of their views on these issues. It strikes me that obviously it was the new Reform MP asked the question at PMQs in the week what the Prime Minister's position was on banning the burqa, which was interesting because it turned out Reform didn't have a position. I think it's a bit odd that Badenoch, which is raising this, kind of very late to the story. No one's really talking about the issue.
Do you find it odd or opportunistic?
I think it's odd and opportunistic. It reeks a bit of trying to out-reform, and I just don't think that's maybe her strength. I don't think it's authentic, and I don't think it's particularly credible.
What does she actually claim in this interview? What are her reasons for wanting to ban the burqa?
Well, she thinks it's all part of a wider integration piece. So she thinks that Britain has a problem with integration. As she said specifically, it's not as bad as, say, in France, where the burqa is banned. So she has qualified that. And, of course, the French have a very different culture when it comes to integration versus
It's not just
culture
France. I mean,
side by
several
side.
countries have banned
Exactly. But I think it's part of kind of a wider piece. She wants to basically say the Conservatives are willing to have the conversation about, potentially sensitive social issues, and perhaps that's an indication of where she wants to take the Conservative Party, whether because she believes it, whether because that's what she's been told, or whether because that's the way she can only get a front page.
Maybe. Kevin, stay with us on the press preview coming up. We'll tell you why the number of children being vaccinated against routine diseases has collapsed to the lowest level in more than a decade. We'll discuss that next. Stay with us.
Paris reverberated to the sights, sounds and smells of conflict. There's a focal point to all this anger, and that is Emmanuel Macron. I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. There are dozens of people desperately clambering to get onto that boat. It is a chaotic scene, but it's being watched by dozens of French police officers on the beach. I've reported on migration across Europe, close up on the ground, understanding that sense of desperation and meeting the criminal gangs behind it. This old fishing boat set off from the Libyan port of Tobruk. There were 606 people who were on board. So we've been distributing life jackets to all the people on board this boat, and now the first person is coming on board. This is the ugly side of Italian football.
In Italy, everything is really organized.
Football's problems with hooliganism, racism were just dormant, and now they're back and they're getting worse. We cover so many countries, languages and cultures and work hard to gain trust to bring you the full story first. Help is slowly reaching these places. It's not just homes, but whole streets like this one that have been reduced to rubble and dust. This is a picture of destruction. Everywhere you look in this mountaintop community, there is absolute devastation. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life, to annex Gaza for Israel.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Gaza, which is just 2 miles in that direction, is under attack again. Getting the chance to tell people's stories, it's a privilege.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast. It's starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
We arrive. a secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's futures.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me in the studio, the PR consultant, Kevin McKeever. Kevin, let's go straight to the front page of the Sunday Times. And, you know, a story here that will be particularly upsetting, I think, for a lot of parents. Children's jabs for deadly diseases slump to lowest level in a decade. And here, for example, it has the example of 11 babies dying from whooping cough. So very upsetting there. Just talk us through what these stats are and what they think might be behind it.
Yes, so it's quite, as you say, concerning story that basically over the past decade, the vaccination rates for lots of serious potential childhood diseases has dropped. For instance, an example given here is that there were 2,911 confirmed measles cases last year, which is the most since 2012. The 6-in-1 jab, which lots of people have at school age, the adoption rate for that has fallen to 83% last year from 89% in 2014. Now, the story references that the WHO, the kind of World Health Supremos, state that you need to be at 95% for herd immunity. That is, you know, the best societal level of protection. And we probably haven't heard the words herd immunity since the pandemic. And,
I don't think any of us have
probably shiver goes down my spine. And I think the story suggests that that's actually potentially part of it. What we've seen over the past 10 years, but particularly since the pandemic, is a real rise in what they're calling vaccine hesitancy. Some of that is to do with, you know, concerns people have had, perhaps post-pandemic, but particularly also the rise in, you know, misinformation on social media, where people are getting the trusted sources are perhaps not as accurate or have the child's best interests at heart. And YouGov are referenced. They've polled 2,000 adults, and there's been a real drop when it comes to confidence, sentiment in anti-vaccine, the cause. I think it's a real concern because once you start to... You have 95% herd immunity in medical terms, but we all kind of know as well, you almost have a kind of a group level of acceptance when it comes to how you treat your kids. And if we start, the percentage of people getting their children inoculated is falling and falling and falling, then clearly it potentially only goes in one direction. The real challenge there is those, it's not even just the kids that become susceptible to some of those, some of those diseases that really were becoming a thing of the past, but it also leads that those most vulnerable in society as well, older family members, for instance, are also potentially impacted. So it's pretty serious. They call it a vaccine crisis, but perhaps a product of the last 10 years, definitely the last 5, Barbara.
Absolutely. Let's go to The Observer. Beautiful picture here from page of The Observer.
Yeah.
Although not necessarily a beautiful story. So Sunday is World Oceans Day, and there's a big conference for the UN coming up this week, and a big meeting tomorrow in Monaco, where actually Prince William is going to give a keynote speech. And it's all about the dangers faced by marine life because of human action often. Yes,
I mean, it's a beautiful front page. But as you say, it's kind of telling a pretty shocking story. And in the keynote tomorrow, I think what we're going to hear is actually the world's oceans are at crisis point. There were some pictures that were shown earlier on Sky News of the damage that's done by what they call bottom dredging of the ocean, which is completely destroying marine life and destroying our habitats. And I think it's, literally say if this was happening on land, there'd be uproar, but because we can't see it and it's below the water level, we don't. I think it's interesting as well that it's Prince William and David Attenborough.
So exactly. So let's show that picture in the Sunday Telegraph, because the pictures that you talk about are from a documentary that David Attenborough has made about the oceans, and Prince William is a part of that as well. It was very interesting to see the two interacting, and Prince William, very much using his platform for issues like this. He is, I think, the founder of the Earthshot Prize, so the environment very close to his heart.
Absolutely, he has total credibility on this. When I saw a bit of this earlier on Sky News, a clip from the documentary, and it's clear, first of all, Prince William cares about it. He's got credibility. He's a founder of the Earthshot, but also the bond he's got with David Attenborough is actually quite remarkable.
Really
he's clearly been his trusted advisor, and tutor on issues to do with the environment over his adult life. So that was really heartwarming to see. That's a lifelong connection, and hopefully one that will make a difference. When these two speak, people listen.
They absolutely do. Kevin, thank you so much. I'll see you in the next hour. Thank you. And now let's take a quick look at the weather.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, the weather will remain unsettled over the next few days, but a change in wind direction will help temperatures reach the mid-20s in the south by midweek, and high pressure building to the west will begin to have greater influence on our weather conditions. Well, for now, there'll be a promising start to the day with much of the UK mainland dry and bright with some good sunny spells. However, showers already over Ireland, Western Scotland and North Wales will spread inland and become more widespread. The showers will be lighter and less frequent than yesterday, with some parts of the country missing them altogether. Southern counties and the southwest are most likely to have a largely dry and sunny day, with temperatures topping 20 Celsius. Elsewhere, values will be in the mid to high teens. Now, later in the day, showers will begin to die out from the west. Monday will be showery in the north, drier in the south.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
And coming up next on Sky News at 11, more on the savage attack by Russia on the city of Kharkiv, described as the largest since the start of the war.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
This is Sky News at 11 o'clock. The headlines this evening. Russia's retaliation. President Zelensky accuses the Kremlin of targeting civilians following the biggest attack on the city of Kharkiv since the